Welcome to a special bonus episode of the Passive House podcast, recorded at North American Passive House Network's conference, Passive House for All, in June 2021 in New York City. In this, the 8th of 18 interviews we recorded amidst the hustle and bustle of the conference hall floor, I chat with Bronwyn Berry of NAPHN and of Passive House BB. A couple of quick thank yous before we get started. First, thank you to NAPHN for putting on the conference and for partnering with us on these interviews. Also, a big thank you to our sponsors who make everything we do at the Accelerator possible. Our founding sponsors are 475 High Performance Building Supply, Baxtingwe Architects, Glavel, Minotaur, Mitsubishi Electric Train HVAC US, Partel, RDH Building Science, Rockwool North America, StoCorp, and Zola Windows. Our champion sponsor is SIGA, and our stakeholder partner is NYSERDA, the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority. So with that, please enjoy my interview with Bronwyn. Well, Bronwyn Berry, board chair of North American Passive House Network, thank you so much for sitting down and chatting with me, and congratulations on this conference.
Thank you, Zach. Yeah, it's been a wild and interesting ride.
Yeah, I'm sure it has been. I think a lot of people have been expressing their gratitude for the leadership that you've all played, both a year ago with the creativity around the virtual conference, and this year, trailblazing around the hybrid model. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks. No, well, who knew that hybrid is actually like more complicated than virtual? And, you know, kudos to Ken and our staff, because, you know, this is the first year that I actually haven't been as like actively involved in the back end of conference planning. I've usually been like super involved. And, you know, now we've really got a solid team and staff that's been able to actually do that work. Yeah, so I've been able to really like step into doing the things that a board chair actually should be doing. Right. And, it's been great. You know, it's been a wild sort of ride and like just very unknown territory, right?
Yeah, totally.
Big adventure, and you know, we've got to go here.
Yeah, we do.
So starting, you know, somewhere is where you got to begin.
Yeah. It's yet another example of COVID kind of pushing us in directions that maybe we knew that we needed to head into anyway.
Well, you know what's so funny about this is like, the 2018 conference in Pittsburgh, at the closing plenary, I announced very boldly.
I remember. I was there. Yeah.
That we were going to do hybrid.
Yep.
Because I was like, I knew that we needed to go online just from a carbon, you know, footprint perspective with flying, and just we had the technology was already kind of coming into play.
Yeah.
And 2019 rolled around, and we actually were like, okay, we weren't quite ready for it, you know, because it was sort of a big leap. And, you know, just, I'm sure you're aware, and you've done this too, conference planning is intense.
Yes.
So adding another layer is a big stretch. Yeah. But, you know, COVID pushed us there, like everybody else. So, no, and then this year, kind of, we were like, okay, we did fine last year, and everybody had a great time. And in fact, new platform this year that was suggested to us by one of our vendors. And so I can't wait to see and hear like how the people online have been kind of engaging. And, you know, because I'm hearing good things, but I'm here.
Right, exactly.
And that's a whole different experience, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Bronwyn, you have been at the helm as board chair for 10 years. We were just talking about this, and you know, I was mentioning that when I've thought of NAPHN, you're always the person who I think of as a board chair, because you have been. And there's a big transition coming. Can you tell us about that?
Certainly is.
Yeah.
So tomorrow at the closing plenary, I will be announcing a transition I don't want to give away all
That's fine. That's fine.
all the juice.
Yeah.
But, I'm going to be stepping into a different role, which I'm very excited about. Not only, for my own evolution in the Passive House world, but, as an organization, we've really have grown and sort of cemented ourselves in a really solid structural and organizational way that I feel really, I feel a lot of pride, and I'm so pleased with where we've come and the current caliber of the board that we've developed, as a community. So there's some nice big things coming, and my role will be shifting, and so I'm getting to do some different things. And that's, I kind of thought I pre-recorded the closing plenary, and I thought I'd be all like teared up about it, and I was just like, I have to say, I was kind of like, oh, that feels great,
It's like, the weight. But you now, so will you be more engaged in policy? I know you've been doing a lot of policy advocacy work.
That is where
right?
I will be heading.
That makes a lot of sense.
Focusing a lot of my efforts and energy. So, and I'm really excited about that, because I think we're really at the cusp of some big shifts. Mm-hmm. We already at the conference today, lots of interesting sessions on financing, verification, really scaling in a whole different direction. But the finance story is one that I think is really going to drive Passive House in a way that we're just starting to really open that up. And policy is another area that I think policymakers have been sort of dabbling in Passive House in some regions, and I'm hearing a huge amount more interest. And we've developed a whole suite of tools and policy sort of templates that we can, bring to our regions to really help. Just here it is, here are the basics, here are the patterns, and here are the policies. Adapt them to your local region, make them your own, own them, but here are the fundamental building blocks. I'm super excited to be able to really spend a lot more time on that, because I won't need to be day to day operations. And I honestly, I haven't had to do that for a while since Ken's really come on board, and we've grown the board and built out a really fabulous team, whom I'm really immensely proud of, and just am honored to have been working with them. It's been a really productive last, really since 2018 when we kind of did a big pivot and revamped what we were focusing on, really decided very strategically that education was going to be our core foundational focus, because it's the building block for everything. So, very exciting.
Yeah, no kidding. That's a big deal. That's a big deal. And congratulations. It sounds like that this shift will allow you to focus on really important work. You've already been focused on really important work, but the fact that there's that organizational capacity and foundation that then you can, springboard off of is really great. And congratulations. You made that springboard, so now you get to jump on it. That's awesome.
I do. No, and there's other big news tomorrow. We are launching our embodied carbon calculator tool.
That's so cool. Definitely.
Which is another project that I've been really sort of spearheading in my time here at NAPHN, and it's sort of grew out of I think the whole Passive House community is ready and been so ready for it for a long time. Yeah. So the plugin tool for PHPP, that's US specific, partnering with our very own, your very own Northwest EC3
great.
database.
Yeah, nice. Well done. Well done.
Yeah. So we are working based on last year's conference where we had Stacy Smedley as part of that discussion. We kind of looked at all the embodied carbon databases that are specific to the US, and the EC3 tool is by far the most robust and the most sort of populated at the current time.
Yeah.
So we connected Tim Martell, who has built the plugin for the UK community.
The PH ribbon, yeah.
Yep.
Uh-huh.
And he has customized it using the IP, PHPP, and the EC3 database for the LCAs, so that we will be able to get localized embodied carbon calculations integrated with the operational carbon
powerful.
that you can get out of the PHPP already. That's, it's connected with the policy work, because we have two policymakers in that session also sharing their NYSERDA's looking at, how the New York State is going to be has been developing a roadmap for their embodied carbon calculation and how they're going to integrate that into the regulatory framework. And then Kim Cheslak from New Buildings Institute, who has been working with a number of jurisdictions around the country, also helping them to sort of devise frameworks for starting to incorporate, like where do we start? Because it's another whole new world, right?
Yeah, right?
We've got operationals reasonably taken care of, but now we really have to go to shift and add embodied upfront carbon. And NBI has really been looking at like different jurisdictions, how to start incorporating that, and where to begin with a calculation.
Right. What is the bar that we're aiming for, and
that's it. Establishing what are the benchmarks, like what's possible now, and then what's optimal, and then that balance point, which I think is really part of the language that Passive House practitioners have got really good at is there's this it's an energy balance approach to building design, right? So now we get to add in the embodied carbon energy and the operational, and really find that sweet spot between all of them, and be able to look at it in a really long-term time frame, which is what we always need to do.
And you're by incorporating it into PHPP, you're also really focused on the embodied carbon implications of the Passive House design moves in particular, which is, that's what we want to know.
Absolutely, and we just haven't been able to, and I think what's so critical and what I'm sort of excited about is, historically we haven't had tools that can do both at the same time and in the same model. So we've looked at them in silos, right? There's operational, and you could do embodied carbon calculations in various different tools. But until you merge them and actually find that combination, it's another whole brave new world.
Yeah, it is. And I think, there's also a lot of, I suspect some misperceptions around Passive House moves increasing embodied carbon. Like, the only way to move past that is to see the numbers. Exactly. So let's see the numbers and follow where the numbers lead, and so that's really good work, and exciting that's going to be something that's accessible to the community beginning tomorrow.
And I think we're going to have to pioneer those calculations. And I have to say, what you mentioned is the perception has been that, oh my God, Passive House is like too much insulation.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Which I think is all the analyses that I've seen of Passive House projects, and I've seen them going back over a decade now, not necessarily here, but in other regions. And every single time they've seen that actually there is this sort of interesting tipping point that happens, and all of the passive house moves have not actually resulted in higher carbon emissions, but it still have been a net benefit.
Yeah, absolutely. And then there's the whole way that a simple compact form is, aligned with low embodied carbon, and so
exactly. So. I think there has been sort of some, it's a really useful new lens for passive house to use, because there has been, and I think somewhat valid criticism of it sort of pushing maybe materials that we shouldn't really be using. And passive house has historically been quite agnostic about materials, but I think it sort of allows practitioners to then choose things much more judiciously. And I've seen in my own projects, there are always these points of where, like, oh man, this is the only product I can get right now that's gonna actually do the job. But maybe learn how to use a lot less of those and find other products where you don't need to be as meticulous, or it's not as sort of mission critical, so to speak.
Right.
And be much more cautious and careful.
So you mentioned your own projects. That's a good pivot to what do you have on the books? What's going on?
I got
or
lots of fun projects these days.
Nice.
Yeah, I have to say my own practice is having Ken come on board and really manage so much of the operational parts of NAPHN. I've really been able to go back to being an architect.
Yeah, that must be fun.
And very fun. And I have some fantastic clients. So I've hung my own shingle back out again. I was working with One Sky Homes, under their banner for a long time, and Alan's retired.
Oh yeah, okay.
So I'm sort of taking off and doing, independent design work again, and I have some pretty sexy projects on board.
Nice.
I've got a big fancy one on 17 Mile Drive in Pebble Beach.
Oh, wow. All right.
So I kind of landed a pretty high, high profile location. I mean, I think even my family back in South Africa knows where 17 Mile Drive is.
That's awesome.
And I've got some other great clients. Some interesting. I'm also going into the prefab world.
Cool. Yeah.
So a couple of projects doing panelized prefab, and then I've been sort of developing a prefab, kind of an ADU that can scale to neighborhood to multifamily, small scale multifamily, that I haven't quite launched yet because haven't quite had the bandwidth. It's coming, and it's in the hopper, and
that's exciting. Yeah,
there's
we're in Seattle, and we've been dreaming about an ADU, and the idea of being able to do a prefab one that is feasible to get onto the site, of course. But I mean, I think that's can be the tricky part. But it would be so nice because construction costs are just so high. So if there's if there's truly a way to innovate through that, that'd be great. So I'm
I need to launch it then, huh?
Yeah. Well, we may be your first customers.
No, and I see a lot of that happening. California's ADU laws changed quite dramatically over the last 2 years, and just that whole industry has exploded. But what I saw is none of them were going passive house. And, there's still a bit of a fear factor around passive house detailing in the construction industry, and particularly the air sealing. And so what I decided to do is to remove that fear factor for the builders and take it out of their hands and put it into the panel subcontractors scope.
Right, that makes sense. Yeah.
And then, the builder, so it just like removes the complexity out of like any builder can deliver a passive house. And once you've done one, you know how that is. It's like you're kind of like, oh, that wasn't so hard, right? And then you kind of go on and you sort of push yourself to the next level. And so, I kind of wanted to build an entry point, starter point, like access point to passive house for anybody to play, which is sort of what we try to do with the NAPHN, is like educate enough people so that anybody can play. Which is really...
Way to come and bring it full circle. That's masterfully done. Beautiful.
I've been doing this a little while now.
I guess so. Well practiced. That's awesome. That's very exciting. I mean, congratulations on all this, your practice. That's great to be able to pivot and then have some really meaty work to dive into. So. Is there anything else you'd like to share with us? This has been really wonderful. Again, thank you for sitting down and taking some time. I know you're very busy at this conference.
Honestly, only, that it's been such a pleasure to have like the accelerator come into fruition and sort of like emerge out of this pandemic, and really just sort of like this flowering of like having another vehicle for getting the word out, because like there's so much work to be done, and like we can't do it on our own. That's always been my mantra, is like passive house is a team sport. And kudos to you guys and the accelerator for being such a graciously open and fantastically welcoming community.
Thank you. I mean, it's just, I think that this is something that really resonates, and I've already mentioned it earlier today, but really resonated with me with Ken's comments. It's just that what we're doing is a manifestation of things that are special about the community, right? None of this would happen if it weren't for the case that we've got a whole bunch of really smart people who are really committed to sharing with each other, and that generosity is. It's
the
It's
superpower.
what it's all about. Yeah, right. It's the superpower. Yeah, exactly. I guess we say it. Anyway, it is really it's something to behold. And man, COVID really forced us onto this online space. So
no, all of us in all of the ways, right? Like between the virtual conference and now the hybrid conference, and then the accelerators.
Exactly.
Kudos to you guys for having just hit the ground running and, grown it in a way that's just magnificent.
Well, thank you. It's an honor to collaborate with you and with NAPHN, so thank you.
Pleasure.
I hope you enjoyed that special bonus episode of the Passive House podcast. On behalf of everyone here at the Passive House Accelerator, thank you for listening, and stay tuned for more on the Passive House podcast. Thank you. Bye-bye.